We're here at the Shelbyville Police Department. Of course, everybody knows that. And we need to have a roll call to see how many city council members we have here. Lisa?
Councilmember Christie.
Here.
Councilmember Hale. Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Turbo.
Yeah.
Councilmember Feldhouse.
Here.
Councilmember Isaac. We do have a quorum, 4 members present, 2 absent, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look over the agenda?
Motion.
I need a second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right. At this time, I'll ask for public comments. If we have anybody from the public want to make any comments at this meeting? Okay. All right, discussion items, final design for the downtown river overlook project. We're going to ask the folks from Neil Schaefer to kind of fill us in and give us the final designs, okay?
You want to say anything or do you want to? Okay. Well, I know we've presented this to you all and we've presented for the public meeting, so we didn't really prepare a presentation for today. We're here more really conversationally to get your feedback, see what you all like out of the 3 schemes. If there's one in particular that we want to pick and move forward with, if we want to adopt things out of the others. And we're happy to go through and answer any questions about them as a refresher if you'd like to. But really, we're here to help facilitate your discussion and thoughts to give us some direction so we go back and have a scheme to start advancing to reality.
Okay, council members, do you have questions on the 3 designs that we had? I mean, we looked at all of them. We kind of discussed them a little bit, but do you have any questions for these folks on maybe making a change to one of them or one of them in particular you like and go from there? Anybody have any comments or anything?
If it would help, we can jump to the last slide that shows all 3. So you
Yeah.
at least have the one.
That's
slide that
a
shows-
good idea. Good idea.
Do you all have anything about the feedback from the public hearing that we had? Do you remember?
Well, I know they liked option number 2 the most, if I will sticker feedback.
I like so too.
Which was this one.
That one right there.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we talked about how we sort of had like pencil and the horses and, you know, incorporate some stuff about the ferries on the river and, you know, all of that is going to come into the final design. That's not glued to option A, B, or C. So, you know, we'll have, that's right, pencil columns for the walking horse scheme, et cetera. So, yeah, we like feedback more on like the design of the overlook as a whole rather than.
Can you put all 3 of them up there?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I think one of the questions is
There you go.
if we think, and you can see here,
Yeah.
they function differently. They all embrace the site and where they are relative to downtown. They all focus on a view towards the river and are shifted a little closer to the dam away from the roadway.
Right.
And they all sort of had that view once you're out there and turn back from a sense of wayfinding to see where the courthouse is and know where you are along the Riverwalk as a trailhead and that you're, you know, in downtown Shelbyville. So differences are sort of the pathways of having really kind of a path that steps off the Riverwalk that can still have benches or tables and chairs on it.
Right.
This one being a little bit more of a raceway where you have 2 sides and an end to it. And then this one becomes a little bit more of an open room that has the steps that sit and look towards the dam as well.
Okay.
So they function a little bit differently. And if you all have a preference about that, if you have a preference about the style and the details or the story that they're telling, if there's any thought to being future overlooks, do we want to make one that pulls all of these together, or do we want to tell a story here and save the next story to tell either along the path of the Riverwalk, potentially elements like the fencing or wayfinding signage that happens along the Riverwalk, thinking along the big picture that we don't want to try and do everything in one place if we're setting up the beginning and the introduction and continuing to tell stories in the future as the Riverwalk evolves and continues to develop. So I think those are some things to think about. There's no right or wrong about them. That this is your overlook and the overlook, for the city. And this was our first blush at starting to tap into some of the history. There's more history that did come up in the public meeting about some other stories we might be able to tell somewhere in the overall project. So we're eager now for, I feel like we've done all the talking to date and we want to be sure to give you all a chance to talk and ask questions, and you're not going to hurt our feelings. If there's something you do or you don't like, we want to hear, real objective feedback, because we want this to be the best it can be to set the tone for future elements along the Riverwalk, whatever they may be, whether they're overlooks or other elements. So
Structural wise, as far as maintenance over the next few years, does one have a plus over the others, or any of those things? The first two are metal construction, is that correct?
Largely, you'll have steel construction for the columns and supports, almost certainly, with some sort of concrete footings that we've not gotten into yet. So
they'd have to be painted from time to time and all those kind of different things like that, right?
Right. The Franklin Bicentennial Park one is painted steel like that and has held up well. I think we look at materials like metal in the railings. It can be pickets like we've shown. It can be panels with art, it can be metal that's water jet cut to create a picture, or have like we showed with this one, the horses in different poses, or the silhouettes of different horses for the history could be mounted to the panels of the railings. So that's a whole design element, and then the next level of detail that we can get to in terms of what those are and what elements of the storytelling those can take on.
Same thing with the fence. The fence is probably on concept number 2. The fence is, are we looking at the color black or brown or something in color?
I'll be honest with you, at this point, the fence is sort of a place marker that was not where we focused the most of our design detailing in. So that fence can be a lot of different things.
And they have electric coating on metal, things like that, where the paint will last for a long time. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Questions, folks? Thoughts?
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
On your concept number 1, you've got 2 entranceway onto because it's very long, seems to be with a greater opportunity for more people to see the river. Your other 2 designs, is it just one way on?
Pretty much.
Concept 3, yes, but technically concept 2 would have 2 entrances because of the way that the
Okay.
You could kind of go into either side of this as it overlaps. And then this one's really wider, so it's as if you didn't have the hole in the middle. So it focuses more the view and how the roof structure opens up out on both sides. So it provides a little bit larger gathering space.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the number 2, which you actually had like the horses around the structure.
Yes, sir.
Could you carry that along the fence row?
Absolutely. We could carry it along there. We could move it to the fence if we wanted to do something different on there.
Put some.
I mean, the inspiration for that was clearly the walking horse celebration and how we got the racetrack was following the geometry of the arena. But we have heard some talk about old river traffic and how we might be able to bring that into this as well. The pencils could make their way back into this. I think part of what we'd like to know is, do you want to start combining all those different stories, or is that getting to be too much and we tell them in different ways in different places? And other stories. I mean, you all know Shelbyville better than we do, to be honest. So, we have tapped into some of the history that's been the obvious history that has come from the city seal. And we know there's hundreds of years of things that could be told and We don't have to do them, and probably shouldn't do them all now, but we want to open up to be able to allow that to happen over time,
Okay.
just to enrich the experience.
My personal feeling is not to have like on the Overlook or on the fence, we wouldn't want probably a walking horse on every one of them,
No.
but have them just every so often. And we could also, like you say, incorporate these other
That's right.
scenes or stories of Shelbyville and the river, Duck River.
It could be every 10th of a mile, so
Yeah.
that becomes another function.
Right.
There's a story to be told or a chapter to be
Yes,
told.
that's
and
a
when
good
you're
idea.
walking, when you get to 10 of them, you've done a mile.
Good
But
idea.
it keeps you engaged in the walking
Yeah.
and being out there.
Yeah.
And, or I'm gonna meet somebody at the pencil
Right,
placard.
right.
And
Yeah.
we're gonna walk to the horse placard and then we're gonna go to the riverboat overlook.
That's thinking outside the
And
box.
that way, when you're gonna meet somebody,
There
everything
you
isn't
go.
the same and you don't know where you're gonna meet them.
There you go.
I've got a question for you all, sort of
Okay.
tying into the multiple entrances versus one entrance, because I know like last meeting, the issue of homelessness came about, and would you want the overlook to have the ability to be closed off at night so nobody could go out there and take shelter? I mean, I know we talked about a lot of tactics of lighting and ways to bring people there, so it's not someplace that homelessness would really populate, but
Good question. What's your thoughts?
If you don't, you can bet that's gonna be the guy.
I mean, all of these are open, so that isn't a place to hide and take shelter.
right.
If they're locked, then we can talk about whether that's a gate or something that closes and you don't
Henry?
want to be able to climb over it,
Yeah.
but the fence. Yeah, the fence probably starts to dictate some of that, and we don't want the fence to be too tall.
Right.
And it requires someone to go out and do it at that point. So there could be security cameras that come back to the police department where if somebody's out there, somebody can go out and scoot them along or help them find better shelter. So they're cared for. Or it can be locked down in different ways.
Well,
And
realistically, number three is the only one to have your little shelter, with a top on it.
Mhm.
So, you know.
yeah, one clearly has no real
Right,
shelter.
right,
Two does around the walking path.
right.
But it also has the opening in the middle.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
three is a little different kind of open.
Mhm.
So I don't know that there's a big difference in terms of roof shelter between two and three, but they are all open. So if it's a blowing rain, none of them are going to really protect anybody. And part of the question then also becomes, do we want benches? Do you want to be able to bring tables and chairs out and not have benches on a permanent basis? The benches can become a sleeping place.
Yeah.
But those can also be designed so that they're discouraging to skateboarders and to sleeping, which you'll see in larger cities like Chicago. So we can take some of those cues and incorporate that into how we design and incorporate them. I do think having some benches along a path is
Mhm.
even along the Riverwalk.
Oh, yeah. I think so,
Would be.
Yeah.
Good idea. I think that's a good idea.
So, and there's other elements that we'll get to with landscaping and some of those kinds of elements as well. Yeah.
Anyone else have comments? Buck, if it's all right, yes, Scott. You know?
May be more Sean,
Sure.
the purpose of today's meeting is to try to lock down in on a scope.
Mhm.
So we can get the footprint and then the NEPA phase can start moving forward. Is that correct?
That's correct. So really what we're looking for, as Matt said, we're trying to get a consensus here. Because at some point it becomes a scheduling issue where you only have so long before we have to spend that money.
Right.
The city will lose the money if we don't spend it. So what we really need to do is we need to get the architects a consensus that says, this is the design we're gonna move forward, so that we can start working on our civil plans for the path, start working on the structural to find out how it's gonna stick up in the, what kind of impacts we're gonna have to the river, so we get the environmental permits, get the environmental document, and that way move forward with it. Because that environmental process, as I'm sure you know, especially going into a river, it can be a long process, it can drag out. So the last thing we want to do is get stuck on that and then have something happen where
Right.
we end up going, oh no, we have to hurry up and compromise or you're not gonna have the money or lose the money. I can have it go to someone who has a project that's ready to dig dirt on. And so really what we're looking for is say, all right, we're gonna do concept 2 with the racetrack, and then like we can do some kind of final details. Do we like 3? Do we like 1? I don't wanna. I know there's some benefits that everyone saw from each of them, and some people may like some others. We wanna make sure that we get a concept that the city's happy and get something to a point where we can start moving forward with construction documents and get into that NEPA process.
And the other design idea that we talked about in the earlier presentations, I just hadn't touched on today as a reminder, is the idea of this setting a gateway from visitors that might be driving by. And what do you see looking at the Overlook, and how can it become a little bit of a welcome and a landmark, whether it says welcome to Shelbyville or says something else, or whether it has letters or not. That may be something y'all don't want to do. We don't want to force that on you, but if you do, they obviously work differently, whether it's just a landmark as something recognizable or something that we incorporate in with the city name as a monument sign of sorts.
That's why I like, as I said in our last meeting, the concept 3, that roof structure is totally different. It looks like it's a place to go play versus the others that could be more industrial looking. So if I'm a visitor coming in or just a local, I want to go somewhere that's going to be different than just an industrial complex type look. Whether it's got steel under it or the rock under it, I like the rock idea, but
I do too.
I got an idea that can be very expensive too. But I like that roof structure to bring your eye to focus over there on, hey, that's something different over there.
Well, and we show all these by day because that's how we envision wanting to use them. But I think it's important to think about lighting and what they could be at night as well as a sculptural element or a sign of sorts, that, you know, there's a little more surface area to capture some night lighting from a distance on this. This could be lit underneath so that you get a glow under that really thin roof that Davis described.
Like
so, and some points of light coming up the columns. If there is signage, we can structure the lighting to help eliminate that signage if that's what we want to do. But we'll take care to make sure that that's all something that can be flooded as well, which we had to do in the Bicentennial Park. So that can all be done.
Yeah, I like the stone foundation. I think that's neat. And either one of them, as far as the river, when we have flood stages, things like that, they're all going to be safe.
We're going to design them to be safe. Now, I would not encourage people to go out on them and flood it. And yes, the city may
go out there and test it.
Well, we did have a question suggestion in the public meeting about, well, if you did a glass floor and then when it floods, you could see the water coming up. So I don't think we would have encouraged that.
I don't think so.
I don't think we.
I don't think so.
So part of the next process is doing the structural design, and so our firmly doing that. We've got a great guy down in our Alabama offices that's in charge of it. He'd already had kind of a preliminary on, if you guys recall, it was a concept done before when you're first looking at the big plan. So he'd already kind of designed that and made sure that that was about a 65% plan. So he has a sense of what it's going to take on here. And so that's going to be part of this next process. Once we know what concept to go with, Matt and Davis are going to get together with my guy in the construction department. We're going to start working through, go, okay, this is what we want to do. At some point, he's going to tell them that they're crazy about some thing. We need to scale it back and they'll work together. And we'll get something that absolutely, of course, is safe. I mean, that was one of the main things that Scott and others picked us for, is that we interviewed well to make sure that that's our focus. I mean, you have a public thing that people can't go on.
That's right. And we reviewed it as a team before bringing it to make sure we weren't showing you something you couldn't have. And he said, I don't see anything we can't solve through design in any of these schemes. So we feel like we're good.
Little history. We don't have elephants, but the Brooklyn Bridge, going back to the Brooklyn Bridge, it's Barnum and Bailey took their elephants across there to test that before people got on it.
Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
going back to that time. We won't put elephants out there. We could put walking horses, I guess.
That's right.
I'm like Henry. I like the stone design on the foundation. And that is so different that it will be an eye catcher. And you might have less people there at night because of the openness of it. I had thought about that one and two. Number one, I don't think I would go with that one, but 1 and 2. What do you think, council? Or anybody in the audience? Do you have any thoughts on which one might be the best?
I like the
We'll consider-
combination of all three. I mean, I think I spoke on that.
So we're gonna put 3 to 1?
Yeah, I'm gonna put a little yes
But
to
there
that
are
one.
details about all three that can work together. So we don't want to discourage you. It's okay to tell us that if you generally like 3, but we want to pull in some of the elements of the pencils and the walking horses into it. We can take that as good feedback from you to go incorporate that into the design.
Okay, so number 2 would be like wood structure. Would it be like the faux wood? Like decking and things? Is that what
It
you're
would
kind
either
of
be a
shooting
faux
for?
wood or really durable, almost like a boat deck
Okay.
wood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there would likely be something, and really that would probably apply to all 3 in terms of the, because that's sort of the texture that you want.
Right,
when you're out
right.
over the water like
Where
that.
people would slip and things. What about the roof on that one, on number 2? What kind of material are you looking at there? Just roughly, I mean,
It would probably be some sort of membrane roof, a flat roof
Okay.
of sorts.
Okay.
We would, I think, in the perspective views, you correct me if I'm wrong, but they're showing a little bit more of a wood slat look, which
okay,
they make that in a lot of forms, whether it's the exact same wood we put on the deck and we carry it up, or they make other soffit material that is a painted metal,
Right.
but looks like wood. So we would start pulling those palettes together and see how compatible they were and if they clash or look good together. But we know maintenance from a flood standpoint and a city care standpoint is going to be really important in all of these.
okay. And the roof on number 3, got an
We have to
idea of
figure that one out a little
what
bit,
kind of
so-
metal or
Cheap and durable.
what do you think?
Cheap and
Cheap
durable.
and durable.
Yeah, I don't think we're thinking. it's
We
a
don't want to see it
tensile
flying over
structure.
Shelbyville.
That's right. We're not envisioning that being a tensile structure, even though it has that white form, but I think it could be a white membrane. And potentially, whether we form it either through framing and clad it real thin, or if we cast it somehow, we'll need to work through that.
Yeah.
We don't have that completely figured out yet, but
Okay,
we know we can get there. Yeah.
okay. Any other questions, thoughts from anybody?
So you really haven't planned on using like concrete floor for that number 3 all time?
We could.
But that would be maintenance
Yeah.
free. We'll do it like
Pebble?
what's the pebble, yeah, like where you do the spray the
Mhm.
river of those, what's it, pea gravel?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that
could
would be
seal
what-
it.
That
We
is,
could-
but that
we
would
could-
last.
yeah, that
We
would,
could use wood formed concrete or forms
Yeah.
for it
Yeah.
to give it a bit of a wood texture, even though it is concrete. And that way it doesn't slip and it takes on a different character, but it would be concrete then. So that is absolutely a possibility.
I think I would prefer concrete. I know it lasts a lot longer than
Yep.
kind of wood.
Yeah, we could do concrete over metal
I'm
pan,
not hearing.
kind of build it like an office floor.
I don't have a problem with three. I don't care. That's what, I
Yeah.
don't care.
And I mean, asking for all 3 of them together is not unreasonable, but it's the idea of taking concept 3 as a form and then
Yeah.
pulling all those details down to that.
I got
And we'll fine tune it, rework it a little bit.
Yeah.
So it has the general idea of being monumental and very showcasey when you're coming in. Highway.
When you talk about number 3, I've heard you talk about it as like a room where you could have things.
Right.
I was just wondering if that's the concept y'all were thinking about, that as a part of the park complex, we could let people reserve it and use it. Is that what you're thinking about?
I believe that was one of the things that Mike had brought up as a possibility for the future, that having this as something that the city could use for, you know, if you're gonna have some meetings out there, some sort of event.
You could possibly rent it for a reception.
Yeah, that's what
Um,
we were talking
or
about.
events. You could set the end up. out there.
It would seem that number 3 would be the most conducive for that.
Yeah.
I think,
Not really the other two.
yeah,
I would agree. I'll-
I would say in descending order, 3 allows it the most, then 2, then more. But you could set tables and chairs up around here. That hole in the middle it's separating, but not dividing. So things could happen that way. Yes, sir.
On the number 2 design, could you incorporate some components from the number 3 design and make it like an infield of the track? That way a wedding party could be in the middle and then the spectators around the horseshoe.
Right.
So,
Uh-huh.
or bands or whatever else.
Mhm. Mhm.
You said you know,
Uh-huh.
Mike, you have any thoughts from Recreation Department and all the things you have to take care of out there with open, pavilions and things like that? Do you have any thoughts about this?
Started with the thought process, and there was where you could rent it and everybody be together,
Uh-huh.
instead of the arch, like 1 or 2. 3 would be a little more applicable for people to take prom pictures or have wedding pictures or play dance and that kind of thing out there.
Good thought. Good thought.
We just do 3 and try the walking horse into it, some of us go.
So what I'm not hearing is maybe we can just eliminate 1. 1 doesn't sound like it has much support at all.
No.
I'm hearing 3 a lot just because the openness of it, the kind of signature structures, people drive in and see it.
I'll catch you.
But I'm also hearing a lot of support for the walking horse, with the track. Now Scott brought up the point about, hey, going out an infield, and so I don't know if instead of it being open, having to, closed off, having a solid floor through there, and then you can do something like that. So there's pluses and, pluses to both of them, but it sounds like we're not considering 1 at all.
So we're not gonna do anything with the pencil.
Yes, we
Well,
will.
no,
We
but
can't-
what I'm saying is, when I'm saying not doing anything with 1, I'm trying to have each of these are obviously very different. And so it's, what is our basic form? But as Matt Davis said, was like, we can pull pieces into it. I think pencils can be represented in any of them. It's just the idea of the walkway arch go out there and pencil structures and stuff. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of support for the arch that deviates off of it.
Right.
Now, the racetrack, as David said in the first time, and I think they did it again in the public meeting, they can incorporate walking horse pencils in there. They can do something with the pencils, and we could incorporate walking horses along the fence line or somewhere with number 3.
Yeah.
I don't think that precludes it. I think we're trying to get the basic form, and then some of the other stuff is kind of the details, as it were, something that gets us, like, what kind of artsy type things do you want to it, but what kind of basic form are we looking at?
I mean,
That's another good idea back here.
I think on the number 3 one, if you incorporate the horse track with like the flooring, the different color flooring, maybe do it that way.
Yep.
I also like number 3 because it is more substantial with the trees coming down the river
Right.
and everything during a flood.
Right.
And it looks like you might be able to create an area of storage underneath, so you could have your tables, your chairs and everything there. So you're not dragging them back and forth every time there's a event.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts, Lori.
I will say just one thought on the storage. If we did it below, we're taking it closer to the water and flood event.
Yeah.
And so, but because we have the building with the restrooms and right near that in the trailhead. of the
Okay, can
parking
you go
lot.
back to that one? Yeah, right there. Give us a view.
So-
Lisa, what do you think?
So we get the bank building that could also help with storage. There's.
Do you have any thoughts?
I like number 3.
I like that stone.
I really like this. Yeah, that's the part of it I like too, the
Yeah.
openness and the stone part of it.
Looks
So one
substantial.
of the things with the stone, I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
it's just, we have to be careful with and I'm not saying we can't do it, but I do know that our environmental people have to look at this, because we have to worry about it. You got
Right.
the Dog River, you got the dam there,
Mhm.
and so we've got to be cautious about how much it goes into the riverbank. So I'm not saying we can't do it.
Right.
It might look a little different. Those stone pillars might get a little thinner to allow
Yeah.
debris to get
Right.
through.
Right.
The,
I just want to make sure we don't
make me more of a
Right.
concrete. It's got fun.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure we don't sit here and have it at the end of the day, you go, wait a minute, that's not like that picture we saw back in
Go back
August of last year.
So
That's what those,
this was a little bit of a different
uh-huh,
retaining wall stone that we used because this flood stage is up here
right.
on this bridge. And that's now been there 10 years and it has flooded. So
Okay.
that's another example of something we could do. Get that stone look. It might not be exactly the stone that you would use in a stacked stone wall, but we can recall that and create that character.
Yeah.
But this gives you more the feel of what that outdoor room could be.
Under that.
You have a little bit
Uh-huh.
bigger, wider space on how you want to use it from a flexibility standpoint.
And it'll have a fence all the way around it where people can't
Absolutely.
leap off.
And it-
Walk
and it-
off.
There they go.
We don't want that.
There they go.
We don't want that.
But yeah, we can bring our pencils back in here.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I thought about. Yeah.
We can. There's-
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose sight of the Riverwalk itself. The
Right.
Riverwalk should be more than just a fenced asphalt path. It ought to be part of the
The
park.
scenery, yeah.
And whether we have stuff in the path, we have stuff on the railing, not the whole way, but use it periodically and they become milestones and markers and just tell the story and give you a little something to pay attention to. And if that's your daily routine, it's like, oh, I made it here, I made it there, I made it to the next one.
Well, there you go.
Because the river is the focus. That's right. And there may be other stories to tell too.
Okay, she's punching up numbers. Take that pencil out of there. Take that pencil.
Well, no, I have an idea.
He's trying to subdivide it.
Rezone, you gotta rezone anything?
You would actually, so the last option you are talking about, I know just from experience, similar situation, there might be, I know you can engineer it, but there might be environmental challenges.
Mhm.
How much would be the difference if you do it as a cantilever?
Well, we have the corner cantilever and we created this solid base, partially part of the arcade in that is because of the environmental concerns and the flow of water. I ironically grew up the son of a hydrology coastal engineer, so I've been out in piers and marinas and helped set tidal gauges a lot in my childhood.
Okay.
So knowing what Sean's team does with a lot more intelligence than I do, I've just been around it to understand the basics. But part of the idea was creating something a little more solid to let that cantilever happen
Mm-hmm.
and create that signage base from the distance so
Yeah.
that you had a backdrop for
Wow.
something as well. And so I think we may be widening those openings. That's what we'll be doing, coordinating with the engineers once we get going. So these are still conceptual. The size of the columns may grow or shrink a little bit. The size of the base and the openings in it may open depending on the flow of the water and what we expect. So
Did you have any thoughts?
all of that will still be part of the evolution of the design for sure.
Yeah.
I know that the banks in the river, I know this.
Bring in
Yeah.
Yep.
Other stuff too.
Yeah, I don't think we know enough about the soil to say that
I
we could
agree with
cantilever the whole thing
Uh-huh.
from the Riverwalk. I think that's gonna get a little too intense for what our budget might allow. So I think we're gonna need some sort of sub-base to meet halfway on that, but we can bring in like the corner cantilever so that you get that really light opening towards the dam side. And it gives you sort of the one side towards the road, but a different side towards the dam. So depending on which way you're looking at it and approaching it, you get something different, as well as when you're out here, you get a little bit more of the straight side and it's really
It
open.
looks like it would.
Kind of has a step or two in it, so it creates a little bit of amphitheater to watch the river activity.
Scott, what do you think? Like that?
You're loving it.
I did think of one thing. I just want it kind of, children aren't climbing and jumping over it.
Well, and
Kids, if their parents aren't paying attention.
no, I think that comes into the sensitivity of the railing design so that we don't create a ladder for them to be able to
Right.
do that.
Right.
In this case, we're actually looking at potentially a glass railing,
Right.
which there's really nothing to be able to climb. And by the time you get that guardrail height. That's got to be at least 42 inches. That makes it really challenging for,
Okay.
not that we can promise to stop every child from his parkour adventures, but that's right. We do as much as we can. So,
Any other thoughts from anyone? Not, we're gonna go to a business item, consideration of motion.
I think one thing is that you look at that environmental and structural, because I've been concerned about the water and the trees hitting debris, building
sir.
up on it.
Having to clean it
The
down.
pressure that's on it to stay within our budget,
Mhm.
it may have to be adjusted.
Right.
Upstream, downstream, something, to be, maybe at an angle so that the debris hits it.
Yeah. And that's part of why we curved the upstream side,
Uh-huh.
so that it naturally kind of works with the flow of the water as well as providing the openings through it. So,
Because if
but
it's
we will,
designed that it's increasing the cost because of where we are, and
Mhm.
then we need to relook at, or look at.
the position of it.
Right, right. Anyone else? Very good discussion. All right, consideration of a motion to identify the parts of the draft concepts of the Overlook to be included in the final design and to authorize the design team to proceed with producing the final design for approval by the council. Somebody want to make a motion on which concept you'd like to go with, and any, I guess, thoughts you have right now on changing that design in any way? Let's vote first on the concept. Can we do that, Lisa? Okay, let's have a motion on which design concept that we would like to go with. Anybody want to make that motion, council?
Concept 3.
All right. Mr. Feldhouse has made the motion for number 3. Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or do we need a voice vote on that? Do we need a roll call vote on that? Okay, okay. I heard all ayes. Do I have any nays?
Yeah, that counts.
Do I have any nays? Okay, all right, that motion passes. Do we have now a motion to make any design changes, or do we want to do that? We know which concept we're going with. What else do you gentlemen need to move forward? You'll be working with the environmental issues as Waleed and Mr. Ballard, our public works director, was talking about how you would do things, maybe storage and all that. Can those ideas come along as y'all make and us not have to make that decision right now?
Yes.
Okay. Any other?
I think just knowing the things you do like, if there's anything you don't like and don't want us to include, then yeah, that's what's helpful to us at this point. But I think the discussion helped with most of that.
Okay. Okay.
So you're good with
What
what items to include in number 3?
I think so. I think we have a little flexibility in there, but we heard that we like some of the concept elements of all 3.
Right.
They can work into the idea of number 3. Is that fair?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing and what you voted on is we're gonna use concept 3 as our baseline.
Right.
That's gonna be what we designed for architecturally, for the size and the structure and how it's gonna be functioning. So what we're gonna move forward with for structurally and environmentally to get through our NEPA process and to move forward with our design. Now, a lot of the stuff as far as the walking horse, Buck's idea of the track on the flooring, getting the pencils for the structural members, a lot of that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically detailing, kind of just the dressing, as it were, and not necessarily the important. Now, I mean, the pencils might be a little thinner, they might be a little thicker, depending on the structural needs.
Right.
Same thing with the stone, et cetera, what kind of floor, whether or not we're able to include storage, because we've got to look at that because it's going to increase bulkiness.
Right.
What kind of materials, but overall, we're going with concept 3 as our base design.
Okay.
And everyone's good that it's not going to look exactly like this. But in general, that is what is going to be out there once we get through construction and open this thing up.
So when-
Trust us to work those details. Yeah.
Yes. But when can we see that, what you just said? when everything kind of comes together.
I think we have to get back with the team because there's certain things we can do relatively quickly, but I think with this direction and the NEPA, it really becomes our high priority. We need to look at it more closely with the engineer to start seeing what might change about that base and footprint. And because these were so conceptual, in the meantime, we've got the survey and we've got some other stuff that we need to start layering that reality in and let the engineers start pushing and pulling us a little bit too, so that we work this together.
And I'm hearing from staff and from the council that we probably don't need to make it, is gaudy the word, we don't want to have horses every place and pencils every place and all that. And we may come up with another idea as far as historically,
That's right.
that we might want to put in. So we could do it, like you said, every 1/10 of a mile or whatever, and then around the outside of that thing or the inside of that thing on the floor. We might tell a story on the floor of it.
Right.
Now, there will be points in our design phase where that becomes we need a decision made.
Yes.
And we're not gonna be able to go back and change it.
Right.
Because that, obviously, every
Absolutely.
time you change it, scope creep is gonna cost more money, or if we make a decision and have to go back and change things. And that's not the path we want to go down. So I think, I don't have a date when they come back with a full concept saying, hey, this is what we included, here's little minor details, but it'd probably be some few months in the future. The next phase, as Matt said, is we need to go in and start going, okay, here's what our footprint looks like. Get our structure guys looking at it, get our environmental people looking at it. And to Mike's point about the water, we have hydrology people on our staff that will also look at what the river does. And so we'll make sure that this is going to stand.
And
up.
that includes what does the river bank look like? We've kind of shown a nice lawn in most of these, but the reality is, it's overgrown.
Right.
And there's going to be some vegetation that we need to stabilize that bank. And that's going to be an engineering function as much as anything else. So getting that for, how open and how much we can do the views, but also not fighting Mother Nature is going to be important.
Okay, you'll be in contact with Scott and will let us know as we go along. Any other thoughts, folks? Are we finished with business for this meeting? If so, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, okay, let's adjourn. Thank you, gentlemen.
Would just like to say